Order the special meeting of the Ascension Parish Council, April 27th, 2022. Would everyone please rise for the indication and pledge? Coach, would you do us the honors, please?
Let's bow our heads, please. Most Heavenly Father, as we come at this hour in the evening, once again, Lord, we're so grateful and so thankful to allow us to be here tonight. And Father, as I bow at this hour, Lord, I pray, Lord, that you bless this council. Continue to bless the administration. I pray, Lord, that you bless those that's under the sound of my voice. And Lord God, I ask that you bless the meeting going forward. And Lord, I pray that you blessing, a special blessing upon Ascension Parish. I pray, Lord, as we leave this place tonight, that you allow each of us to get home safe and sound to our families. In your name we pray. Amen.
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 Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Secretary, please make note that all council members are present. And at this time, I want to call on Jerome Fournier. We're going to have a change in the order of the agenda tonight. We're not making an agenda item change, but we're going to change the order, and Jerome is going to explain that for us.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Members of the council, if you look at the agenda items 4, 5, and 6, refer to batch 2 that were presented to the Planning Commission and were considered by the Planning Commission. Items 7, 8, and 9 was actually batch 1 that went there. They were kind of reversed, so we're going to reverse them in order. Reverse them in order on the agenda tonight. All right.
So tonight's agenda, we will address items 7, 8, and 9 first, and then 4, 5, and 6.
Great. Thank you.
Okay. Is that all?
Yes, it is.
Thank you.
I would like, though, to introduce Eric Poche's here for consideration for tonight, our senior planner. Mr. Sean Shiro, our engineer, will be here later. He's caught in traffic right now. I would like to introduce Brian Mabry, who's our consultant with Kindig Keast, and he's here for questions as well, all right, to answer questions.
Welcome, Brian. Thank you for coming.
Yeah. And Ricky's here as well. I forgot Ricky.
Oh, don't forget Ricky. Ricky's back there in the corner.
Yeah. Thank you.
Ricky who? No. Very good. At this time, I'll go over some housekeeping. For the public, please sign a card if you would like to speak. You will be given 3 minutes to speak on an item you sign up for. Speakers will only be heard during the public hearing. Once the public hearing is closed, no public comment will be taken. Okay? And from the council's perspective, after the public hearing is closed, we will go through each section for discussion. If anyone offers an amendment to the document as introduced, we will vote on the amendment at that time. When discussion has ended and any amendments have been voted on, we will then vote on the whole ordinance as amended. Okay? Y'all got all that? All right, moving right along. Item 7, which is first on the document, on the agenda. Reading of an ordinance to amend the Unified Land Development Code, Appendix 2, Development Code Section 17-2082B, Fence Requirements, and Appendix 4, Subdivision Regulations, Section 17-405, Preliminary Plat Procedure, 17-4021, Large-Scale Development, 17-4032, Street Requirements, 17-4032B, Access and Connectivity, 17-4037, Servitudes, Utilities and Drainage Requirements, 17-4039, Block Requirements, and 17-4060, Traffic Impact Analysis, TIA, and 17-2011, Definitions. Kenneth, would you please read the ordinance?
Yes. Purpose, to amend and add certain sections of the Unified Land Development Code, Appendix 2, Development Code, specifically add Section 17-2082-B, Fence Requirements, amend Section 17-405, Preliminary Plat Procedure, amend Section 17-4021, Large-Scale Development, amend Section 17-4032, Street Requirements, add Section 17-4032B, Access and Connectivity, amend Section 17-4037, Servitudes, Utilities and Drainage Requirements, amend Section 17-4039, Block Requirements, and Section 17-4060, Traffic Impact Analysis, and amend Section 17-2011, Definitions. Whereas the Parish of Ascension desires to establish a new fence permit procedure and standards to ensure fences stay out of servitudes and establish consistency with types of fences throughout the parish. And whereas the Parish of Ascension desires to clarify the procedures for plat approval and establish a system by which the statutory 60-day approval clock does not begin until the preliminary plat application is deemed complete. And whereas the Parish of Ascension desires to have the large-scale development section of its code specifically referred to the Pelican Point project, and whereas the Parish of Ascension desires to clarify and make consistent its street requirements, including but not limited to increasing the minimum road width from 18 feet to 20 feet, and whereas the Parish of Ascension desires to establish standards for mobility to within and through a proposed development and its connection to existing and/or future developments, and whereas the Parish of Ascension desires to clarify its requirements for servitudes to be identified and recorded with plat documents and require servitudes to remain free of fences, walls, structures, and any other debris that may impede adequate drainage, and whereas the Parish of Ascension desires to require consideration of its new connectivity standards when determining block lengths, widths, and shapes, and whereas the Parish of Ascension desires to transform the existing traffic impact analysis policy from attachment A into an established codified subdivision regulation and amend the language and procedures for clarity and simplicity, and whereas the Parish of Ascension desires to supplement its definition section for clarity and consistency with its code of ordinances, now therefore be ordained by the Ascension Parish Governing Authority of the Parish of Ascension, State of Louisiana, that the Unified Land Development Code be amended and supplemented as further described in Exhibit A attached here to and made a part hereof, repeal all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict herewith or hereby and henceforth, repeal severability. If any provision of this ordinance is held to be invalid, such invalidity shall not affect other provisions herein which can be given effect without the invalid provisions. And to this end, the provisions of the ordinance are hereby declared to be severable. Effective date, this ordinance shall be in full effect as permitted by law. This ordinance having been submitted to a vote, the vote thereon was as follows.
Thank you. The chairman will entertain a motion to open a public hearing. Motion by
Second.
Chase to open a public hearing, second by Terry. I've got to help organize these cards as far as who's going to speak. But first speaker, James Falgout, Section 174032, Part 2B. You have 3 minutes, Mr. Falcon. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm James Falgout. I'm speaking on Sections 17-432, Part B specifically, about this 50-foot concrete pavement. We brought this company in to kind of go through these ordinances and see areas that we need improvement, and then here we are conflicting our building line requirements right off the back. I'd like to know where the 50-foot came from, what would their logic on that is. Our zoning, where you're in a subdivision or in a rural area, we usually have a 25-foot building line from the right-of-way, and here we're requesting 50-foot of concrete from the right-of-way. So, I mean, we're pushing these houses back even farther, so in a neighborhooding subdivision, are they gonna have to build their houses farther back? So there's a conflicting issue right there. And you're not only asking for 50 foot from the right-of-way, you gotta do from the right-of-way to the road, so the additional 20, 25 feet. So residential, dividing up a lot, you're adding roughly 70, 75 foot of concrete. You're adding, what, $12,000, $15,000 to the cost of a residence right off the back. I would like this to possibly be pulled or amended to be more discussion and more compromise on this, that we can get something accomplished. You know, a good compromise would be in favor of replacing the individual lot to replace it with a new servitude of passage is created with 3 or more lots, accessing a servitude to a public road. Can be no more than 40 foot from the edge of the road, and it pending, occupancy permit. That way we're not doing it as when the lot's being created. Once we ask for an occupancy permit, that's when they have to build the asphalted road or concrete. The way this ordinance is written, it's very bland. It's very misleading in some aspects because it doesn't even give a width. It says 50 foot in length. Are we talking about a 1 foot strip? Are we talking about a 20 foot by 50 foot? I don't see how we can vote on this with just this information. I think we need more. Let's put it off or make a motion to defer maybe to the next meeting so we have more information to help our residents. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Next item On item 8, Aaron Chasson.
Thank y'all for doing this today. As y'all know, I was on the Planning Commission when we voted and passed these on to y'all. I just had a couple of quick comments I wanted to note. One, I would ask y'all to go ahead and approve these. I think this is a good compromise. You'll probably hear some people after me speak on some of these and say they go too far, and some people speak and say they don't go far enough. I think this is a good compromise on a lot of the issues. Two specific things I wanted to address. One was, and I think I sent Jerome an email, 174032B. When it passed out of the Planning Commission, we added in subsection C5 the words Planning Commission and the word only. For whatever reason, the version that got to you left out the revision that said Planning Commission. So that's supposed to say the Planning Commission and Director of Department of Planning and Development in consultation with the parish engineer may only modify the standards in this subsection C if, and then there's the 4 enumerated options. I'm not sure why that got left off when it, probably a typo or whatever, but just to kind of wanted to let y'all know. The other one is we still have the conflict in 174060 subsection G2 where the first sentence uses the word may, and then the second sentence says the required mitigating improvements shall, which sets up a potential conflict where you have a permissive in the first sentence and a mandatory in the second sentence. I know the purpose of these revisions was to try to get rid of a lot of those conflicts. So my recommendation in order to resolve those conflicts would be to change the word may to shall in that first sentence. And it's really weird because if you read it, even though the first sentence says may, the required improvements in the second sentence say shall. So I think regardless of the way it's written, it's still mandatory because of use of the word shall in the second sentence. But why, if you're going through all this trouble to revise the code, leave a potential conflict in word language there without resolving that and making it clear as to what's actually supposed to say and making the language consistent throughout the article. So I would just ask y'all to pass them and just kind of make those two little revisions. And thank y'all very much. I appreciate it. I know it's a lot of hard work, so thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. Next, I have, it says items 6 and 9, and 9 is in this particular section. So, Blaine, PT.
Hi, good evening, guys. I appreciate the opportunity to talk here. What I'd like to do is kind of go back a little bit. Before this reached the Planning Commission, the administration created a group of people, a multidiscipline, multi-stakeholder group that represented a lot of the different moving parts here, people who have interest, whether it be ordinary citizens, developers, engineers, multiple individuals with the parish. They were all put together. We all went in a room, we looked at the code, we tried to make suggestions to address some of the biggest issues our residents see: traffic, drainage, you name it. Whatever it is that we thought the residents were most concerned about, we tried to address in changes in this code. Where it may not be perfect, and I do understand there probably will be compromise, I think it represents a good faith effort by the administration and this council to move forward, to start seeing progress on, number one, the revision of this code, and the next step, enforcement. The next step is looking at the code again, throwing it against the wall and saying, hey, does it work? Did it do what we wanted it to do? I do think it does represent good faith, but I will leave you with this for time. There was an article in the Advocate written by Representative Scalise and Representative Carter addressing the National Flood Insurance Program and what it is doing, the new risk rating 2.0. Now, flooding is obviously an issue that we're worried about as residents in this parish. FEMA estimates, and this is their own office, that 80% of Louisiana's national flood protection policyholders will see a rate increase. They also state that of those 80%, 90% will see an 18% increase each year for a period of up to 10 years. That means a decade of 18% year increases on some homeowners, some that have policies. This will make home ownership almost prohibitive for some. I know the big argument I hear lately is property values. We worry about property values, worry about inventory. Not being able to afford flood insurance will affect property value. You won't be able to sell your home if you can afford to stay in it. So that is a big issue, obviously, with a lot of folks. That is something that is coming down the pipe. FEMA, according to both representatives, have not been very transparent on how they formulate these increases. So that's something we're going to need to worry about, something we're going to need to stay in the front of. And that is, like you all know, a function of government. Local government is protection of residents and citizens. I do think the code and the revisions in the code are important. I was lucky enough to be involved in the committee. So I can't tell you enough, it is important, and I think you guys see that. So I appreciate the time you give me. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. And have Cindy Steyer. She said she does not wish to speak, but is in support of 6 and 9, which is both of the ordinances. Let's see, it's 5. I think the rest, unless I'm reading these incorrectly, the rest of them are for item 5, which is on the next set of sections for the drainage. If someone else had a desire to speak and didn't fill the card out correctly, would you please let us know at this time? Okay, there be no further requests to speak. I'm sorry? Come up, ma'am, come up to the mic, please.
I live in Geismar on a portion of family land, and we want to divide the land up, but the moratorium keeps setting us off and off. I can't proceed to do the things that I need to do with the portion of land that I want. I'm not trying to build a house, I'm just trying to put a mobile home. But every time I go, they keep saying the moratorium, say we can't divide it, tell the moratorium, and the moratorium keep getting moved back and back. I just need to know what procedure I need to do to get the portion of land in my name so I can go on and do what I need to do.
Ma'am, I'm sorry that's really not an agenda item here tonight.
What is it?
We'd like to address that, but we're trying to get these things moved forward so we can end the moratorium.
Okay.
Any other explanation? Jerome? Anybody?
I know that you have you extended the end of the moratorium to end of May.
Mm-hmm.
That's a council decision as to how that wants to act. Right
Yeah.
now, it ends at the end of May, right?
Okay. All right.
Bring the card to Miss Simmons right here, please. We have a lady who's holding her card.
Okay, she needs to
Yeah.
give it to Cinnamon.
Yes, ma'am.
Did you hear the date that you gave, Jerome? I don't know if she was paying. What section? Okay, Ms. Ricks, you did not identify what section you'd like to comment on, but,
I didn't see any papers, don't know what went where, so I couldn't put.
okay. Go ahead and step up to the mic and express what you'd like to talk about.
I just heard you all talking about the drainage situation. My name is Reverend Glenda Ricks, and I've been having this problem ever since from the beginning, dealing with the drainage. I talked to Mr. Clement the last time meeting I was here, and he was supposed to get back with me because my problem haven't been solved. They haven't addressed what they can do dealing with the drainage in that area, and it's bad in my part. We was talking about drainage, right?
No, ma'am, we're talking
Well, I
right
heard
now
you say
about
drainage a minute.
transportation-related issues in
Okay.
in
I thought I
these-
heard you say
in these
drainage,
ordinances.
so that was
We'll
why I
call you
wanted
up
to speak.
for the next section, okay? All right. Any other comments? Any more speakers? Chairman will call for motion to end the public hearing.
So moved.
Motion by Terry, second by Chase to end the public hearing. Now we're going to open it up to the council members for discussion. And we're covering item 7, which is the Unified Land Development Code Development Section. Anybody have any comment, any wishes, any motions to make? Chase, go ahead.
I'd like to make a motion to move the ordinance and also have an amendment to it.
State your amendment, then we'll consider the rest of it. You can't move, you have to move to make the amendment. You have to move to make the amendment, correct?
So we're gonna go section by section?
Yeah.
And once all the amendments are voted on, then we'll move the ordinance as amended.
Oh, okay.
Okay. First section, 17405. Is that preliminary plat procedure? I'm so sorry. 17-2082B, fence requirements and Appendix 4 subdivision regulations.
Motion to accept it as it is.
Got a motion?
I'll second.
Second. Any objection?
I have a question.
Councilman Lawler.
Just for clarification, I know I've been through this, but then I've talked to people and I get conflicting opinions on it. The permit requirement applies to all fences. Is that correct? Whether it's rural, conservation, everywhere?
We have some exemptions to the requirement for a fence, right? So where a property is exempt from that fence requirement, obviously they don't need a permit. Okay. So in rural areas.
But if they put up a fence, is the question, do they need a permit?
In those areas, they would not, because it's not a requirement, right? So.
See, that's my concern with this section. That's what I was trying to get at, is that, part of the reason that we're doing the fence requirement is that we don't block drainage.
That's correct.
Just because you're in a rural area doesn't mean that drainage, in fact, it's probably pretty likely that drainage does flow through your property. Right. And if you decide to put up a fence that blocks drainage, that kind of defeats the whole purpose of not having a drainage, a permit there.
Right.
So that was my concern all along on this, that I think it really should be, if the real concern on these fences, which from everything I've talked to and everybody I've spoken with, is that we don't want fences blocking drainage, that this should be any fence that's put up, we need to have a permit done so we can make sure that it's not blocking drainage. And it doesn't matter whether it's rural, conservation, in the middle of the city, wherever it is.
Okay.
So yeah, let me ask, how would I, because as I read it, a fence permit shall be issued by the building permit prior to construction for any fence. And that was my concern, or wall. Arguably, that could be read to understand that you need it for any fence. So how would we write this better that it would, I guess, apply to any fence if we're saying that it doesn't?
Okay. We can.
I guess you would eliminate B, because it says these standards shall apply to all new whatever, except for the following. States properties greater than 1/3, fences of 3 wire.
Okay.
So section B is the
Okay.
one.
Yeah.
Councilmember Lawler, if we could make a suggestion, is that if we would remove B1, properties greater than 1 acre in size in rural or conservation districts, if we remove that particular sentence, then the permit would apply to everyone. So I think that might be a way of making a modification, right?
That's good. That's what I was kind of hoping for. That's the amendment I would like to make.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Here's a motion to amend section 17-2082B to remove item B1, properties greater than 1 acre in size in rural or conservation C districts. Is that correct, Councilman? All right, and I got a motion and a second. Any objection? No further discussion? That carries. Any other issues under item 17-2082B? Okay, moving along. Next section is 17-405, preliminary plat procedure. What is the wish of the council?
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion by Aaron to approve
I have a
as
procedural question.
presented, and second by Terry. Councilman Malonzo.
Hey, so we already made a motion. So this is all one ordinance. So we don't need a motion to approve each section. We're just going through each section in case we want to add an amendment, correct?
Correct.
You're gonna, if somebody proposes an amendment to
Right.
what is existing, what you have in front of you, then you're gonna vote on that at the time that they propose that amendment. You're
Right,
not-
but we don't have to make an amendment to,
No.
we don't have to make a motion to approve section 17, 20, 18.
No.
Right,
So
okay.
what you're looking at right now, it should actually be a clean copy
Right.
because that's what y'all introduced.
Okay.
We're not thinking of these as amendments. What amendments are, is what somebody's gonna propose tonight.
And then at the end, we'll take a vote on the amended whole document, as I said.
Right, I'm just saying,
Yeah.
on the last two sections, we just made motions to pass those sections. Like, we don't need to be doing that.
No,
Only,
they
we're
remain
only
as
voting
is.
on amendments right now that we proposed.
Right,
Okay.
exactly.
Correct.
Okay,
correct.
thank you.
Yeah. All right, where were we? 405 preliminary plat procedure? Yes. Done? 174021, large scale development. Any? Okay, 4021 is quite long. Scale development. Any comments? Do I have a motion? Councilman Orgeron.
Why are we identifying this one subdivision? Is there a purpose that we're isolating them and creating rules strictly for this one subdivision?
Point was the only subdivision that was created utilizing this section of the code. And hence, since this section of the code, we can do PUDs and plan unit developments that would more appropriately apply, that concept and planning concept to new subdivisions. So, but since Pelican Point was actually adopted and approved under this large scale development, we didn't want to eliminate the section. We just wanted to make it apply to that particular
Perfect.
subdivision.
That's a good, I didn't know the answer to that question, and I don't like picking on anybody.
No, thank you.
Thanks.
Don't feel picked on. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions, comments? Need a motion, please?
Again,
Corey?
Chairman, you don't need a motion.
Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. Thank you, Cinnamon, keeping me in straight and narrow here. Moving right along, next section, 174032, street requirements.
I have an amendment, Chair.
Councilman Malonzo.
Yeah, on section 174032, street requirements, section A, number 2, letter B, where it states individual and shared access points into such divisions of property shall be fully paved to at least 50 feet in distance from the public right-of-way. Just a quick comment. So, I mean, we have like a lot of family partitions and simple divisions that you don't have to put a private road or private access to get to the lots. They have the proper road frontage. So if someone was to have 2 acres of land and they have 400 feet of road frontage and they took this 2 acres and made it 1 acre, those 2 1-acre lots, according to this, would have to, if they're on a state highway, would have to pour 85 feet of concrete from the road going into their lot for them to be able to divide those 2 lots up. So I'm not sure why we put that in there, why we added it. My amendment is that I would replace item B with shared access points into such divisions of property creating 3 or more parcels shall be fully paved at least 25 feet in distance from the edge of any parish, state, or federal highway and 20 foot wide before any occupancy permits will be issued. So if you do have this scenario to where you're creating 3 to 8 lots, and they're all gonna share this one access point to get there. At that point, we'll require them 20 foot wide, 25 feet deep. And the reason I changed from building to occupancy was just, I had a few people call me today, and also from my experience, when I built my home, I put down some crushed concrete trucks and whatnot, and the week before I moved in, I poured my concrete, that way to construction. So they cannot move into the home until this criteria is met. So that is my amended motion and my reasoning behind it.
I'll second the amended motion.
A motion and a second. Y'all have any questions? Go ahead, Mr. Bourgeois.
What you stated earlier is not what you have
Well, I
identified
changed.
on the document. You kind of added.
Well, I should have put the 25 feet on the document, that's why I said it.
Okay.
I just read that.
25 foot, and you said 20 foot wide?
Yes, sir, 20 foot wide. That way, if you have 3 or more homes, right, there's a pretty good chance someone's gonna come in and come out at the same time. There should be enough room to where someone's not sitting on the road waiting on the car to pull out.
Our rules for subdivisions, correct me if I'm wrong, is 24 foot. Would you be open to amending that 20 foot to 24 foot to give people access in and out of their homes?
Uh-huh.
Is it 20 or 24?
It's 20.
I think it's 20, but with the apron. Is it
Inside
there?
of subdivisions.
In subdivision, it's 27 foot back of curb, back of curb.
Okay.
And the reason for that in subdivision, it anticipates on-street parking for multiple subdivisions, which you would see less likely in a situation that Councilman Wonson is bringing up in a rural sim. Usually those lots are deep enough and people can go down the drive, and parking is not as much as a concern.
Right, I understand that, but I'm guessing if we make this change, it's not going to be limited just to developments that include two or four homes. It could include more homes than
Up
with
to
the
8.
scenario we were described.
Up to 8.
So I'm thinking we need to be prepared for it to be greater, just as a just-in-case measure. And I would think the 24-foot would adequately provide that safety that we're concerned about.
Councilman Ogeron, if this is intended mainly for family partitions where you have a servitude of passage that is a maximum of 30 feet in width, generally when they do that, they can do anywhere from a 10 to 12 to 15-foot drive, and they'll have ditches on either side. I would say that anything greater than 20 feet would be overly onerous on somebody like that, because it's not for a quote-unquote subdivision. It's for a division of property for family heirs where they would normally have a gravel driveway that ran to access all of the lots.
8 or less, is that what we're looking at, 8 or less?
Yes.
Okay. And again, it's good discussion. I'm not sure of the answer on this, but, we're doing this and we're hoping to do it once. We don't want to have to come back and make changes to what we're doing here. So that's kind of why I'm asking if widening it would help some. Is that question for me, Clint, or is it for the group as a whole?
General of the topic.
Mr. President.
Thank you, Chair. I know when we were doing family partitions, even in the 2000s and working forward, we used to have a rule where you could have a single 20-foot servitude of passage, and it was 20 foot. And we had talked to the Sheriff's Department, the Fire Department, as well as the ambulance service on what that requirement would need to be for them to get emergency vehicles in and out. And 20 foot was decided and nothing less, because it was talked about having less than 20. But 20 was decided on being the very, very minimum so that emergency vehicles could get in and out and two vehicles could pass each other in that case. So that's the reason that 20 foot seems reasonable, or at least that conversation has been had over the past couple decades. Just wanted to add that input.
Thank you. Mr. Lawler.
Mr. Prochet, I understand you right there that on a family partition, it can be as small as 10 to 12 feet coming off a highway?
No, I mean, there is a provision in the code that the Planning Commission can place a requirement on a subdivider of a family partition that is, if it's greater than 3 lots, that they have to have a paved road, either a paved road or a 4-inch gravel road, a minimum of 20 feet wide with a 24-foot road bed that has to be done before the building permit is pulled for the first home construction. That is a little used section of the code. It's only been used a couple of times, but typically when someone does a family partition, they will do an access, and they will probably do a 12 to 15 foot wide apron of gravel, and then it'll usually be, depending on how many lots it is, anywhere from 12 to 15 feet going down. It's typically a gravel driveway, unless you have a bunch of them that get together and want to pay to pave or have it asphalted or something like that. But that's the only requirement that's in the code for a family partition.
That's concerning to me, because when we look at some of these, if they're off a major highway where people are driving at decent speeds, and believe me, I see this kind of thing quite often. If I think either Corey or Chase mentioned it, that if somebody's coming out and then somebody's pulling in, if the car on the highway has to stop to let somebody in, that's creating a dangerous situation. How can we change, and can we do it tonight, to require that if you're doing a family partition or anything, you've got to put the road in that's 20 feet? Because we're creating dangerous situations all around the parish by not allowing that.
Isn't that what Jake's proposing?
No.
That's at 20 feet?
Yeah, I mean, this amendment, all right, it would
Was it
allow
25 by
someone
20
to
feet
pull in
width?
and pull out.
But would this
Gentlemen,
apply to
hey,
all?
Excuse me, Jim, one at a time, please. I think Councilman Lawler had to.
I just want to make sure that this, once again, this, I know you're right, I just want to make sure, but, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the amendment, as Chase described, I mean, the amendment to require the apron, I mean, like I stated previously, you know, the requirement is 20 feet should the commission choose to force it on to or make it a requirement of the subdivider when they're at the planning commission. But if you changed it here and did the apron 20 feet wide, then that would allow 2 cars to pass, so somebody wouldn't have to be sitting on the highway waiting.
And that gets to my question, so this would where is it though that the commission has that ability to keep it at a smaller width? Because it seems like that'll conflict with this. So we're going to have to repeal that also, otherwise we'll have 2 conflicting statements.
It's just one of those things that it's in section 174026.
Maybe when we get to that.
D2.
B2, I'm sorry?
D2. AI.
Okay, so maybe that's something, it seems to me that we're going to have to repeal that at the same, no, we wouldn't have to repeal that, we'd have 2 conflicting
The
laws.
current code requires a 20-foot driveway. It does not require it to be paved. This revision requires the apron where it attaches to an existing road to be paved. The current code requires 20 feet wide. We don't go out and survey private servitudes of access to ensure they're building a 20-foot private gravel drive, but the code says that's best practice. That's what we want. This new law that you guys are passing is going to require, at occupancy, our building inspectors check that there's a 20-foot wide, 20-foot wide, 25-foot long apron where it attaches to the road. That's the change. The code already says it has to be 20-foot wide in the middle of a 30-foot access servitude with a 5-foot ditch on each side. Again, we don't go out and inspect private servitudes of access. They're private.
So to be clear, then if this is passed, then we will no longer be able to have a family partition of between 4 and 8 with a 10 or 12 foot entry point.
Correct.
Right.
Okay.
20
So
foot, 3 and 8.
Between 3 and 8, is it 3 and 8?
3 and 8,
Okay.
yeah.
So my next question is, though, that kind of makes more sense now why we're at 50 feet, and maybe Kenny Keats can ask that, because if that's the only part that's going to be 20 foot wide, a single vehicle is going to take up that entire 25-foot area. To where if you have 2 people leaving at the same time, you're going to have a situation where the person coming in off the interstate may not be able to get in. And if you've got...
There's not a car on the road that's wider than 20 feet.
No, I'm talking about
length. 25.
If you only do 25 feet back, my truck is 22 feet long.
The point of the apron is to prevent the gravel from getting on the public road. The car stacked behind the car waiting to enter the road is not bringing gravel onto the road.
You're missing my point, Ricky. There's also the point of the apron allows, and I think somebody mentioned it, it allows somebody that's on the road to turn into that private driveway without having to stop because they're blocked by another vehicle. If you're driving down 431 and you want to turn into a private driveway that somebody has got a family partition on, and it's only 12 feet wide.
It's 20 feet wide by 25 foot long.
Okay, well, listen to me. Okay, let's do 20 feet then. I was trying to make a point. So let's do 20 feet wide. And you've got two people leaving in the morning, and they've got two pickup trucks. Now, my truck's 22 feet long. I'm hoping the person behind me is not going to be right on my tail, and they may be back also. You know, they're going to be behind me, right? And they got a pickup truck. And if the roadway behind that apron is only 12 feet wide, the vehicle that wants to turn in,
It's going to be 20.
the apron is 20 feet wide, but it's only 20. Please listen.
It's only 25.
This is simple, but it's only 25 feet deep, right? So after 25 feet deep, how wide does it have to be?
20 foot.
The entire way?
Yes.
Okay. But I'm confused about Eric saying that they could be 10 to 12 feet.
When we didn't go check them, this process of approving this allows us to go and check, because we're checking the apron, we can check the drive. Because the enforcement part has never been there, because we've never gone out and enforced the driveway part. But now, since we're going to send an inspector out, he's going to ensure that the 20-foot drive is in same width as the apron. This allows us to fix that.
Okay. That's it's not all on here. When you're talking about 10 feet wide, 12 feet wide, you know, it's funny. You say this, it seems kind of funny, but how many times have you seen a terrible accident, even on an airline, where somebody's just making a U-turn and they stop and the person behind them plows into them? And that was the concern there. Okay, it makes sense, as long as we get nice wide roads. We learned several in strategic planning that 20 feet wide is the key.
Yeah. Okay. Any further discussion?
I have one question, sir.
Councilwoman Keza.
Clint, when you all were doing, Mr. President, excuse my informality, when you all were doing these discussions in the past decades about this, were today's fire trucks considered as far as the width? I just want to make sure, because those huge vehicles now do require a lot of turning
I don't think we allow the 20-foot anymore to a single lot. So we don't allow that. So we hadn't had that discussion of recent, because we eliminated that and went. So we eliminated I think the 50, 60, and 40. So we just went to a common 30. So we eliminated the 20. So we hadn't discussed that because it's 30-foot now. But if the fire truck can pass on a parish road, and we'll have this discussion a little bit, 18 feet or 20 feet, which we all wanted to go to 20 for that safety, then a driveway at 20 feet should theoretically be the same safe as the parish road at 20 feet. Therefore, we're requiring individuals 20, requiring parish road to be 20. Seems the consistency is there.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Any other comments? I got a motion and a second. Any objection? There being none, that motion passes. Moving along. Section 174032B. At this time, I'm going to call on Jerome. We have a language situation that was presented with the documents we received tonight, and he wants to make a correction and seek an amendment to change that language.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Yes, Mr. Aaron Chesson, who got up here earlier, addressed it as well, right? Yes. So if you look under 174032B, 5, the first sentence on 5, currently it says, the Planning Commission, Director of the Department of Planning and Development, in consultation with the parish engineer, may only modify the standards in this subsection C. The Planning Commission asked that the Planning Commission may only modify the standards in this subsection C. So we should eliminate the words Director of Department of Planning and Development in consultation with the parish engineer. So it should read, the Planning Commission may only modify the standards in this subsection C if. Right?
I'll make that motion. I'll change that language.
Motion by Chase, second by Aaron.
What we passed was we added the words Planning Commission and added the word only. So it should say the Planning Commission and Director of Department of Development and Planning, so it should say, the Planning Commission and Director of the Department of Planning and Development in consultation with parish engineer may only modify the standards in this subsection C if. When it got to y'all, for whatever reason, they lined out the words Planning Commission. So it was correct, but then they lined out, at least as it appeared on the packet for the agenda, they lined out the words Planning Commission. So, because see, if you look up here where it says what we added, we only added the Planning Commission and we added the only.
Okay, that's a typographical error in our part, so what Mr. Sheslin is saying is correct, and that was by the Planning Commission.
So we just need to add back Planning Commission?
So what we need to do is add those crossed out section that says the Planning Commission, add that back in, and I think we're where we need to be.
And I'll second that.
I can explain the purpose of that if you need it, because I see Aaron's confused.
Yes, not one, and I see what it is, but go on.
Okay, so the purpose for that was, what you're trying to do is force connectivity, because that's going to be the cheapest way for y'all to fix the traffic problems, right? So what we're invariably faced with is we're at the meetings, everybody comes in with their little picket signs. They want you to connect everybody else's subdivision except the one they're in. And so ultimately what happens is the commission caves to the pressure of the people and says, okay, well, we're going to say you can't connect. And because that's the path of least resistance, which goes against what you're trying to accomplish here. So what we were trying to do by including the Planning Commission and the word only is the Kendi Keast had set up 4 circumstances in which they think you should be allowed to waive the connection. It's 4 very limited circumstances. The way it was written, by saying the Director of the Department of Planning and Development can waive it, led up to a potential interpretation where, the director can only do it for these 4 circumstances, but it's silent as to the commission, so the commission could, in theory, waive it for any reason, including, well, the people next door don't want to connect. So by including Planning Commission in there, it limits both the Planning Commission and the Director of Planning to waive the connectivity requirement only in one of the 4 specifically enumerated subsections there. And I think we've talked about that in personnel before in one of my interviews, and I'm not going to call anybody out, but I know some of y'all were in favor of this. but eliminating the discretion, because then your hands are tied, right? That's what the code requires. I think everybody agrees that's the best planning principle, but when you're faced with a room full of constituents and you have the discretion, it's hard to tell them no. So let's take away the discretion. Let's force connectivity, which everybody says is good planning principle. And, when they come and say, well, I don't want you to connect to mine, well, we don't have the discretion anymore to remove that requirement. So that was to tighten up the language so that the Planning Commission doesn't have the discretion to remove the requirement, except for those very 4 limited circumstances. And I could say I'm not in favor of quite a few of those 4 circumstances, but again, it's the compromise. So that was.
But
Thank you so much, Aaron. I would say that the language should read the Planning Commission and Director of.
Correct.
That's what I was going to ask.
But add and.
Right. Yeah, it would have to be an and there. Correct. Yes.
Planning Commission and Director.
Which was part of the issue with when we're trying to amend.
Okay with that, Joel?
So the important part is, though, there has to be agreement between the Planning Commission and the Director of Planning and Development.
Correct.
With and.
Correct.
That's the intent, right?
Right. Yeah. Well, the intent was to not allow a change other than in those 4 circumstances. I see what you're saying. So you would have to have the commission and the director.
If we add and to it, you'd have to have the commission and the director. If you had or, you could have a conflict between the commission and the director. And, it's always been, hey, we don't want.
Right.
You say
right. You don't want the discretion in the hands of someone who is not either appointed or elected.
Exactly. So that's why I'm making sure with the and is important.
I never thought about it that way, but I would think the and is conjunctive, so it would require both.
Yes, that was my point there. So as long as we have the and that's understood that it's going to require both, and just with consultation with the engineer.
Okay, so you're amending your motion to add the Planning Commission and Director of Planning?
Yes.
Okay. We got a motion by, substitute motion by Councilman Lawler.
Second.
Second by Mason, Michael Mason.
Request to speak. Question.
Go ahead, Corey.
Okay. We just had two lawyers talking. I guess I'm going to get the third one in here, kind of ask a question on that. If you put "and" in that sentence, and then it has to, then both parties, the planning commission and the director, have to agree. In essence, since the director gets it first, if they say no, you have now tied the hands of the planning commission on whether or not they feel they should allow it to take place. So you're eliminating the planning commission by putting "and." It's strictly a decision being made by the director. And vice versa. If the director says yes, and planning commission, so you're still limiting it to just one party making that decision. I don't know how we fix that from semantically to do what you were asking to get it done. Because I don't think "or" satisfies it either.
No.
So we have to sit here and make a decision. Do we want it to be just one or the other? Because it's not going to be both.
Mr. President.
Thank you, Chair. So Councilman Lawler is correct. What you want to try to do is make this as difficult as possible and take it out the hands of reversing connectivity, because it is a true planning principle, and you want both to require, even or not. If one says no, that is the point, because we're trying to make it difficult, because we want connectivity, and it's very difficult for y'all as councilmen when you get a room full of constituents to say, we're going to vote you out if you don't stop this connectivity. And we're trying to get away from that. We're trying to take that pressure off of you and require as difficult as possible so that connectivity exists in this parish, because it's one of the reasons why we have the traffic issues we have today. And it's reasons why kids stay on buses longer. It's the reason why it's more difficult for Amazon to pull in and out on 74, in and out of every subdivision, back and forth, just stopping traffic. It's the mail carriers, it's the UPS, it's everybody. So connectivity is a true important component, and we want to make it as difficult as possible to reverse. And I think "and" is 100% correct.
Okay. Councilman Romero.
I just wanted to point out the aspect semantically. I mean, if you have to have approval of both, it doesn't matter who approves it or doesn't approve it first, because if one of them isn't going to approve it, it never would have been approved anyway. So we're still in the same situation. I mean, it doesn't matter who approves it first. They both have to approve it. You know what I mean, as far as to answer Councilman Ogeron's argument.
Councilman Lawler.
Yeah, I'd like somebody from County Keys to explain the four exemptions here, because, I'm looking at B where we lack subsurface drainage. That to me is something that could easily be remedied, that we could easily go in and, add the drainage there, whether it be a pipe or something if you're crossing over a ditch. Because I'd really like to eliminate as many exemptions as we can to ensure there's connectivity. And if we have to eliminate all of them, if they could go through each of the four and tell us why that's really necessary.
Okay. And I see my my boss, Brett, on the line as well and on the screen. So each of these are criteria, as stated, that would be considered by the commission and the director when somebody makes a request to not have connectivity. And there's in C, there is an "or" there. So that to me says that you could get by with only having one of those apply, and an applicant could be excused from the connectivity. So A, connection that the subdivision would result in inherent conflicts between vehicles or between vehicles and pedestrians. The trying to look out for health, safety, and welfare, that creating the connection isn't causing an unsafe situation for drivers or pedestrians.
Could you provide a more specific example of where that would happen?
I do have one.
Probably not locally. Brett, do you have any thoughts, or does staff have any local thoughts on?
Are you able to hear me?
Yes, and see you.
Okay, I tried weighing in earlier and nobody was able to hear me. Yeah, so the question regarding if the connection to that subdivision would create a conflict between vehicles and pedestrians, I guess that could be, if that access point is not lined up with an access point across the roadway, or if there is any other access that may be, too close to this access or anything of that nature, where you would have vehicles queuing or, just conflicts between cars, slowing to enter into a driveway and that conflicting with other driveways to other properties. So there could be several different situations where that could create a hazard and an undesirable condition.
Mr. Chair, if I might add to that, we have numerous subdivisions that were developed quite some time ago. Some of them have open ditches, an example. Some have narrower streets. If we're going to be connecting into some of those that we deem to be unsafe, looking at it from an engineering perspective and some other perspectives, that's where we may want to not have interconnectivity. But as the parish president said, we have been demanding it lately, and it's when preliminary plats come before the Planning Commission, staff has recommended connectivity on numerous occasions, and it's been knocked down because of vocal opposition from the neighboring subdivisions. So we want to make it as difficult as possible to deny connectivity, but under these circumstances, I think it's pretty tight. So, right.
Councilwoman McCaskill.
Well, I hate to disagree and and I'm certainly not disagreeable, but every subdivision group that comes to a meeting claims that it's going to be dangerous.
Right.
That's going to be, we're going to have the conflict between cars and kids at every meeting. So whether that's realistic or not, that's what they're going to say. That's what they've always said. And it's hard to vote for connectivity when people are talking about their children and their safety. But at the same time, that's true everywhere. So that one particularly could be used as an excuse to okay a lack of connectivity for all of them, in my opinion.
I don't know how to correct.
Keep in mind here that I think the section that's forthcoming on traffic impact analysis applies for all proposed subdivisions, as well as any zone changes. So in those conditions, there may be a TIA or an impact analysis that may contribute to this as well. You also have, both the planning director of planning and development as well as the parish engineer that can weigh in professionally in those instances. So I think there's opportunity to have professionals weigh in on that, and to the extent that a TIA is applicable, that could contribute as well.
Councilman Malonzo.
I forgot what I was going to say. I'm sorry. I've spoken out of turn like 3 times today. I apologize.
Parish President.
Thank you, Chair. To me, I don't know why we have 4, and I agree with Councilman Lawler. We could just use D as the only one, and I would think it would be the only way is if there was a subdivision development that didn't have access. Why would you turn into it? Because it's just not going to buy a house out to make a connection. What if there's a swamp there? That you just, it's just no reason to put a connection street there, so you just don't have one because of that condition. I don't know why we have 4, but I do want to say that, Tarek said, these are just suggestions. It's up to this board to put common sense to it and make the best recommendations. So these are just suggestions, but I don't know why we have 4. I think you have it in D, and that's really the only one that says, if it's otherwise impractical due to site conditions or surrounding site conditions, other than that, you got to connect, period.
I like that.
I like that.
So where are we?
My point to that's a very good point. We are not able to anticipate, all the things that may come into play with different developments across the parish over time. So typically we like to write standards that are articulate and try to anticipate as many of those conflicts as possible. So we try to provide as much specifics as we possibly can so that staff, when they're making a recommendation, and planning commission, when they're making a recommendation, they have, ordinance language to draw from. D kind of does sum it up, but it's a little more broad and general and doesn't quite get to the depth of the previous three. So just for your consideration.
Councilman Mason?
Yeah, I was going to say what President Quintmont said. So with that, I would actually like to make a motion that we scratch 5A, B, and C and just move forward with 5D.
Second.
Got a motion by Councilman Mason to scratch A, B, and C under section 5 and keep only section D, making it A.
Making it A.
And second by Councilman Lawler. Councilman Lawler, you had a discussion?
Yeah, I was actually going to make the same motion, but this kind of brings me to a point about all of this. I know it's probably going to make a lot of people disappointed, but this is one of the few things that we're doing tonight. One of the very few things that is actually going to make an improvement. And the reason I say that is everything else we're doing tonight, all of this stuff, it's not going to improve anything. That's the reality of it. It's not going to improve traffic one bit. This will actually help improve it. But all this other stuff is just pat ourselves on the back, and after this we're talking about a great job we did. The reality is, I'm serious, if we don't build another house for 10 years, we're still going to have traffic problems? Yep. We're still going to have safety problems on our roads? Absolutely. None of this is going to fix that. With this one little thing right here is going to help improve traffic and possibly make things a little safer by improving traffic, quite honestly. But everything else we're doing tonight, every single part of this doesn't improve traffic one bit, doesn't improve safety one bit. Because I'm telling y'all right now, if we don't build another house in the next 10 years, do we still have traffic problems on 621? Do we still have traffic problems on 73? Absolutely. So until we get serious about do we actually want to fix our traffic problems, this is all feel-good stuff. And I'm sorry to put a wet blanket on this, but that's the reality of it. Until we get serious about actually fixing our traffic problems, this is just feel-good material. But I second that motion.
You like feeling good.
All right, I got a motion and a second, as I stated.
Is the motion yet on removing or putting back in planning commission?
Yes, that was already.
We've already, did we vote on that?
No, we never voted on it.
Yeah.
I thought there was opposition. I thought.
Position?
There was. Because I know we were having a lot of discussion on it. I just don't remember us making that decision on it.
The question was never asked if there was opposition.
I'm right?
You're right.
Wow, thank you.
Good catch. Let's do that.
Did y'all see that, guys?
Okay,
Those two agree?
going back, it's the
And I
same
said thank
section, but item 5, the header, the planning commission and director of department was the motion. Is that correct?
So I can amend my motion to include that if you'd like, because I'm making a motion for number 5 anyway.
5, you want to
So,
add and?
all right, so I'll make a motion that for number 5, we add the planning commission, add and then strike out A, B, and C.
Okay. Everyone understand the motion? I got a motion.
We'll be clear which sections, right?
Yeah,
Okay, good.
5, scratching out A, B, and C.
Keeping D.
Motion by Michael, second by Chase. Any further discussion? Any opposition? That motion carries.
Yay. Good job.
Good job, Mike.
All right. Next. 174037, Servitudes, Utilities and Drainage Requirements. Any comments, any discussion? Chair would entertain a motion.
No
No motion necessary? No discussion, no motion. We'll move along. 1740-39. Let's go, I'm sorry. Councilman Ogeron.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair, for allowing me to break from our normal routine in this procedure. I'm going to be asking to be excused again from a meeting a little early. I haven't gone public with this situation, but about 2.5 months ago, I was diagnosed with what's called long-term COVID. And it creates the same fatigue and the same symptoms that you have when you have COVID. On top of that, lost my hearing as a result of this. And sadly, it's usually this time in the evening is when all the symptoms come back. And I want to apologize to everyone tonight for not being able to stick through the rest of the meeting, but I'm confident that my fellow council members will take care of this and do a good job and take care of the public. I'm gonna have to leave, so I'm capable of actually driving home.
Okay.
So you guys all take care. God bless you guys.
Corey,
Thank you, Coach.
take care.
But I gotta go.
Be safe. Be safe. Okay. We were at 174037. That one passed, correct?
Yeah, no changes.
174039, block requirements. Any comments? There being none, we move along. 174060. If I'm not mistaken, that's where Mr. Chasson had pointed out some language issues. 4060, right? One said shall and the other one said may. Is that correct?
On D2.
D2? Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to make a note here that what you see here under this traffic impact analysis was formerly an appendix to the ULDC as attachment A. What we're doing by putting it here is that we're putting it actually into the text of the ULDC, and that's why it says replaces attachment A, traffic impact analysis policy.
Okay.
Right? I just wanted to clarify that with the council.
What was that section?
We corrected the issue about the parish governing authority.
This is the last. Any further discussion?
Are we on block requirements or traffic impact analysis?
We're on TIE.
We're on
TIA now?
TIA. Traffic impact analysis, 174060. Councilman Mason.
From what Commissioner Chasson said, under Section G, mitigation, number 2, he's asking that we change the first line. It says proposed development that is subject to the TIA requirements of this section may be denied. He's asking us to change that to shall to keep the verbiage consistent. That's what Mr. Chasson was requesting. I'll make that motion.
Got a motion?
That's on page 16, G, mitigation, line, that's section 2, or part 2. It says a proposed development, the first line, that is subject to TIA requirements of this section may be denied. He was asking us to change that to shall for consistency, because the next sentence is shall as well. So I'll make that motion.
Got a motion, seconded by Dow. Any questions? Any further discussion? Aaron Lawler?
As far as the applicability of this, so number 2 is the expansion of existing project under construction may also be subject to TIA. I don't like the ambiguity of that, may. I mean, how do we decide if it is or isn't? I'm sorry, that's under 174060B2. R2D2, number 11, page 11.
Can you answer that? Can we get Mr. Giroux to answer that before you give some clarification? Yeah.
So remember, everything about the traffic impact policy itself is dealing with generating new trips. There's a lot of times there's existing facilities that might be expanding a warehouse portion, but not the office part. There's some things where they're not generating additional trips just by expanding their facility is more likely where this comes into play.
And my question, how do we decide that? Because if you're expanding a warehouse, wouldn't that mean more trucking traffic, possibly?
It's not always. Sometimes you're changing use.
No, I guess, but that's what I'm asking. How do we decide that? Because, we're trying to avoid ambiguity.
I guess
that requires a TO.
one way to go about it, possibly, I'm going on the fly here, is if you remove that sentence that they still do existing, they still require to fill out a traffic impact form. They fill out a traffic impact form. If they note that they're not generating any additional trips, then you stop right there. Right now, to do a traffic impact policy, the very first threshold, you're basically filling out a form saying, I'm generating such small trips. Should you want to do a larger study in the future, you have my information. But that's, I don't know how, it's just how it's been used. I guess you're trying to lock this thing, hold that tighter, and then we don't know how everyone's going to apply this in the future. But that's, we get this a lot. I have a new warehouse, I have a new expansion add-on. We say, are you doing anything to generate new trips? No, I'm not. All right, then this policy is not applicable to you, and we just stop in the process.
And I guess my next question, and there's not a perfect answer to that or any of these, I guess, not applying to single-family residences, but it is going to apply anything more than one division, any division of property. Would that be correct?
I'm sorry.
Will it apply to any division of property?
It would.
Nine or more.
9 or more houses? Less than 40 trips.
Only if they meet the thresholds, correct?
40 trips, then it's not applicable.
Actually, if you're less than 40 trips, this ordinance is still applicable to you. You just have to do some minor paperwork.
Mm-hmm.
You're required to do a threshold 1 on every single thing unless you leave some of these exemptions in. The expansion, a single-family residence, simple divisions, on more than 2 residents. We're just saying, we're not even asking you to require you to fill out a form. To fill out a form, you have to have an engineer on board to say you're generating 1 trip, 2 trips. And so we're trying to, so there's really just 3 tiers the way I see this. 1, you don't have to fill out a form, it's not applicable. The second tier is really threshold 1, and then the third tier is what we call threshold 2.
And I mean, look, I don't know if there's a perfect fix for this, but looking at numbers since 2012, 26% of our new construction has been family partitions and single divisions. That means that a quarter of our development in this parish, 26% of new homes, require no traffic impact study, require nothing. That could severely alter a street, especially you talk about a street like Cannon Road that's skinny like that. That's my concern here is we're eliminating looking at 26% of our homes out there and say, hey, let's not even check what traffic does. That's an awful lot.
Mr. Chassaw, if I may, basically that's.
It's all good.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Lawler.
I'm sorry.
Hey, when you got 2 good-looking guys like this, it's really hard.
Sorry. Aaron, I'll call you Aaron from now on. Basically, and that's why we why we have a traffic impact fee. All single-family residences are required. If it's a mobile home, it's $1,500 when they pull a building permit. If it's a single-family home, about 2,000 square feet, then it's $2,500. So that, in I guess administration's eyes, is our way of taking that into account without making them do a traffic study.
But my thing is, if you have on one road, say, 3 family partitions, that could be 24 new houses. That's 24 new bits of traffic, and that could change one leg of a intersection, could it not? To make it a D? Or less than a D?
Anything's possible, but I mean, each one of those dwellings would be paying a traffic impact fee, which is to negate their impact, their traffic impact.
Well, but so does every other development.
Yes.
But we're going to stop some, but not all. How do we come up with that? I mean, because look, that becomes a legal issue too at some point.
Well, I mean, we've got two different thresholds. Anything less than 40 trips has one type of study, and it's based on the number of trips. And if they're required and go to a certain point where they have to provide a traffic study, then they would based on the number of trips that they have. And then they would be required to go under the impact policy.
President Quitman.
Yeah, so when we looked at this, and for what I understood, is that it would be exempt under 40 peak trips. The reason for that is, for a simple division, one lot into two, the cost of having an engineer on top of fill, on top of this, on top of that, simply makes it unaffordable for an individual or a small development, such as a family partition, to even be possible. Because it ramps up the cost of so many different things. And so to do a traffic impact study on a simple division or something like that, at some point in time, there has to be a reasonability of cost. And this is probably the reason why we've just had the discussion about reducing that 50-foot and making some changes there to reduce costs just for the average homeowner. Because today, with increased building costs, flood insurance that's about to skyrocket, impact fees that they all got to pay, it becomes the point where you can price out the lower income family completely. And that's possible. And so I think that the 40 trips was to allow that smaller divisions and simple divisions to happen, to continue that semblance of growth. And if you look at family partitions, if you're using, I know that I've had conversations with Chase. He's run a lot of numbers on that, and he's probably a little better expert than me, who used to do them, when it comes to look at the historical rate at which family partitions have impacted our parish, because I was severely impressed when he started running his numbers off to me. But yes, there has a point to where we can take out the lower income family, and it becomes so expensive they just simply can't live here. They can't build a house or whatever. It's just the cost is going to be so extreme. So that is the reason for the 40 trips. I was under the impression that they did not have to do a traffic impact analysis under the 40 peak trips for that very reason. But this is the will of the council at this point. So that's my comments. Thank you.
Okay. Councilman Malonzo.
Oh, yeah, thank you, Chair. So I spent the last week or so, I went on MuniCode, I went through every planning agenda going back to January of 2016. And this is not approved. This was just what was on the agenda. Not all of these lots were approved. But since January of 2016, family partitions have created or proposed creations, 481 total lots. For an average of 80 lots per year. That 481 lots was on 1,109 acres for an average of 2.3 acres per lot created. There was 3 large family partitions that I left out because it really would have skewed the numbers. Like someone took 250 acres and made a 1 acre, a 1 acre, and a 248 acres. So that was, in the same time frame, there was 5,193 lots approved in minor and major subdivisions. So based on what I did, I was showing 8.4% of the lots created since January of 16 were from family partitions and simple divisions, and 91.6 were from the major and minor development. And on average, that was 2.8 dwellings per lot. So, I mean, you're looking at an average of around 6.5 lots a month that the family partitions and simple divisions create on an average of 2.3 acre lots. And I'll tell you what's even more eye-popping. Out of the 481 lots that were created, only 15 of those family partitions and simple divisions were 5 or more lots that were created. Like 76% of them were 2 lots, like 20-something% was 3 lots. And then they had a couple 4s, and then 5 through 8 was only 15 times that we created 5 to 8 lots in the last 5.5 years. So I just want to throw those numbers out there that we do the family partitions, but it's very minimal. And on average, a family partition is like 2.8 lots, and that's on 4.6 acres. So we're not exactly creating a whole lot of traffic there. So I just want to make those comments, Chair. Thank you.
All right. Councilman Mason?
I don't understand. I asked Aaron, I don't think he knew the answer either. So if it's less than 40 trips at peak time, how do we determine that if they're not doing a traffic impact study? Like, how do we know if it's less than 40 if they're not doing a traffic impact study?
Unless it's exempt from doing, like I said, it's 3 levels. One, if you're exempt right now, if we don't change anything, single-family residential access. You don't have to fill out a form. It's not waste of time to tell me you got 1 trip for a house. You don't have to do anything. You already just go straight to the permit office. Now, if you're not exempt, there's a lot of commercial permits that we review. They have to fill out a form to tell us how many trips they have.
That's what I'm asking. How do they find that out?
They do, it's in the traffic impact policy.
They just tell us? They just say, oh, I have 30?
No, it's.
That's what I was about to say.
It's in the document.
Okay.
It says you're required to use the latest approved, I think it specifies, trip generation manual. It's an industry manual that's based on studies across the United States. They do statistical analysis to say the most likely single-family subdivision does this. A commercial that's 25% warehouse and industrial does this. They're required to use the same form for consistency.
That's okay. That's what I wanted to know.
And we provide, actually a lot of them, we provide the form to them, the data to look at to make sure even it's consistent. We confirm it's less than 40. It goes into the files. And then we check for the site distance per this table. And then we move along. If it's greater than 40, then that triggers, all right, now we need to have a discussion. How big's your study? How many intersections we got to look at? And we get to the other part of the traffic impact policy.
Councilman Lawler.
Yeah, I also had a question on the mitigation section, which is on page 16 of our document. It's section G2D. It's in situations when the loss of service is under D for a leg and ways that they can eliminate it. The elimination of the potential for additional traffic generation from undeveloped properties in the vicinity of a proposed development. If you're already failing, if the proposed new development is already failing, how does that bring the intersection up to a standard where it wouldn't be failing? I don't think it does, is my point.
This would very likely be a land use issue on, particular zoning categories within that area, if it's zoned commercial, industrial, perhaps residential, so we're looking at the anticipated growth in an underdeveloped area, or possibly undeveloped area completely. Right.
But what I'm saying is if somebody comes and applies and they have a 41 house subdivision and we do a traffic impact study and it says you don't pass because this intersection is an F, them going to buy more land isn't going to increase the service of that intersection. So I just don't see how that's applicable to any of this.
Right.
That's why I would think maybe we should eliminate that.
Okay.
And my other, a lot of this kind of makes sense. One of my concerns, though, is, our intent with transportation is to move traffic, but it's mainly our major highways, our 73s, our 42s, 431s, 621s. There's a potential here, and I don't know if there's a fix for it, that somebody could say, well, yeah, I can pass this by slowing down traffic on 621 to allow this minor street not to be a D. I don't think that's the intent that we want. Is there a way that we can prevent that from happening, that you cannot slow down a major highway? And I think the DeLone subdivision was something of an example of that. We had a very minor road that was potentially causing the subdivision not to be built. The last thing I wanted was to slow down traffic on 73, but that could have fixed the problem. But I don't think any of us here want to be the ones responsible for saying, hey, we slowed down traffic on 73. It's not going to go over real well.
No.
So how do we, can that be fixed in here to eliminate that situation?
If the words "in the vicinity" were to be struck, would that resolve the question? Eliminate the potential for additional traffic generation from undeveloped properties of the proposed development?
I don't think.
Wouldn't be in the vicinity, because that would implicate other properties owned by other persons.
But that would potentially, and let me ask this. I'm moving my paper like you can, my water like you can see me through there. So would that mean like if you had a subdivision that was going to be phased in 4 phases, and that would, you know, if it was the 4th phase that was causing it, you mean eliminate that phase? I don't know why I'm looking at
No, until which time there's improvements that will accommodate that phase of development.
I think that could be a fix.
What section?
From section D, the one that I was talking about before.
G2D on page 16.
16?
Otherwise, D looks like it's just that we're gonna go tell developers, hey, you can build and you can even be worse than the subdivision, and you can worsen traffic, but if you buy some property over here, we're gonna let you go. That's extortion. And that's what D, as it's written now, seems to be. So I think if you eliminate it in the vicinity of the property, it's putting it on their property. That's really just a lowering density is all that would be at that point, if you remove in the vicinity. But my other question is, how do we prevent people from slowing down our major highways? One of the things I'd like to see is that some sort of weighted system, you know, that we actually look at which roads are more important. You know, there's no need to go slow, you know, White Road. There's no need to slow down traffic on 73 for some little road that may only have 10 or 12 cars. That just doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, we want our traffic to flow towards the interstate. We want it to move there. We shouldn't be trying to slow major highways. And that's one result that we could have from this. And is this something we need to look at further before we move forward on it? So that we don't slow down our state highways or other, I mean, not just state highways. I mean, we don't want to do this to Roddy Road or any of those.
I can make a comment. We'll be moving into phase 2, which is drafting the balance of the development ordinance. And in so doing, we could evaluate some of the different best practices that different places do across the country regarding adequate public facilities requirements, which basically requires that, you know, the design capacity of adjacent roads is sufficient to accommodate the traffic that's being dumped onto it. And there's another mechanism that actually my partner founded that's called traffic sheds, which basically looks at the land areas that feed those different arterial roadways and proportionally allocates the design capacity of that road, meaning that there's not first one in gets to take up all the capacity, but in this way, everybody gets their fair share of the capacity of that roadway. And then it would require, you know, improvement, widening to improve the design capacity to allow development to continue. So that's some of the conversation that we can have in this next phase of the project.
Councilwoman Kazo.
So it seems to me we should defer this piece until we have all of that discussion. And then let's address this and see if we can't fix it all at one time. Would you agree, Aaron?
Yeah, I mean, I just don't want to slow down our major roads. I mean, that's the whole goal, is moving traffic.
Certainly not. And then I want to go back just a second if I can. I had asked months ago for how many family petitions had been created. I have some spreadsheets from the parish. And I think we have a difference of opinion about how many total lots have been created by subdivision and by simple division and by family partition. So before we make a lot of moves on that, I think we all probably ought to pull that and sit down and have some discussions about it and let's make sure we're all operating from the same numbers. And I'll be happy to make both of those in a form of a motion if that's what it takes.
Chairman Cagnolati, so you can't defer a part of this, you would have to strike it
The whole section.
and then adopt the ordinance and come back later and amend the ordinance again.
Okay.
That makes sense?
Councilman Lawler.
I just want to ask one question. Mr. Keys, can you hear me? Okay. What
Yes,
would be, thank you. What would be a timetable? Could this, to look at this section again, could that, something that could be done?
It's important.
We've kind of laid out a project schedule, so I think what we would have to do would be to move that part of the code forward and address that sooner than later. Brian, do you recall, if I'm not mistaken, I believe, well, I shouldn't say it. Brian, do you remember when the first module is going to be coming to the parish?
Yeah.
It seems like it's going to be in August or something.
Looking at a schedule, trying to see here. Final week of August.
Can we move that?
Yeah, so
to the
in
front?
the interest of time, with the agreement of staff, we could, juggle that project schedule to kind of move that portion of the code forward so that we don't leave this undone for too long.
Yeah, I think this is a very important section. It's just, like I said, slowing down things, major highways isn't something we want to take a chance of. And I'd rather get this right the first time than dilly-dally and keep trying to fix it later on. I don't know if there's any other discussion on that, or?
Any other discussion? So what's,
Is it just to remove the
Chase?
traffic impact?
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I was just asking, Ms. Casso, is your motion just to remove the section 174060, the traffic impact, the study from the ordinance?
TIA.
I believe so, if that also clarifies the situation with where we need to go back and discuss some of these family petition numbers, so we're making sure we're operating from the same set of numbers.
Yeah. So that would
If
be.
that's the case, then, because I don't follow all, I'm struggling to go back and forth between my document here, but absolutely, that would be my hope, is that we could strike that, work with Ken Keys and the staff to get that, to perfect that. I'm not opposed to it, I just want to get it right. And I want to have some clarity on the numbers on family petitions. So, yes, that would be my motion.
Yeah, I'll second that. I mean, most of this is
Councilman Mason.
fantastic. It's just, I don't want to slow down big highways.
Councilman Mason.
I have to disagree. I mean, I think the traffic impact study is one of the traffic impact analysis is one of the key parts of this that I don't want this moratorium to expire with this still lingering, and he's talking about end of August. I know we said that we're going to potentially bump it up, but without a firm date of when we're going to potentially bump this up, I'm not comfortable taking it out of this right now. He said that there are parts later that we can discuss and nail down these things. I feel like we've got a pretty good TIA part right now. I know Aaron wants to add some stuff, and I'm okay with that, but if we can add that stuff later, I would feel much more comfortable with passing this. So I'll actually object to taking those out or striking those.
Well, we're not striking those particular, it would be the section.
Yeah, strike. I object to that motion.
Okay.
So is it,
Councilwoman Kaza.
certainly, I'm not trying to extend the moratorium either. I certainly would like to see this handled very soon. Like, can we look at this next week?
And put it on the May 5th
And put it
meeting.
on the May 15th agenda. I just think we need a few more conversations.
Yeah, that's absolutely my goal, is we meet this May 31st deadline. That is,
Yeah,
I think that's all of our goal.
I share that.
So, yeah, we're going to try to, administration-wide, reach out to every one of you to figure out what parts of this, community, Kenny Keys, staff, get all of those questions, all the numbers checked as soon as possible.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, so that's my goal.
Yeah,
You
mine
wanna
is not
amend the motion
not to be past the end
to
of.
bring it back on May the 5th?
Just, we must bring it back on May the 5th.
Okay.
All right, as
If-
long as it's on the May the 5th agenda, I'll withdraw my objection.
So it would,
Okay.
it would have to be an introduction on May 5th, and then it won't be adopted until the 19th, just so y'all know.
Yeah.
Okay. Is that good enough?
Yeah, that's good enough.
Okay,
we'll
so
have 10 days
please,
then.
please amend your motion to include
Sure.
May the 5th.
I would like to amend my motion to include that this be brought, that we work diligently and that this be brought back for an introduction on May 5th to be voted on May 19th.
Got a second. Councilman Robert.
I just wanted to, I guess, more of a question of how the process works. Is there any way we could put something in the code to say that it is reattached or that it is added if it is not done before the moratorium? Because just because we said we're going to discuss it, then the moratorium still ends, doesn't necessarily mean we're going to vote on it, right?
That's, the motion is to vote on it on the 19th.
That's my intention, is that we vote on it
So
on
that
the
we have
19th.
to vote on it?
Yes.
Right, that's the motion.
Yeah, it's
Okay,
a
I'm
up or
good with
down
it.
on the 19th.
As long as we vote on it, yeah.
Yeah, thank
Okay,
you.
so if
I appreciate it, gentlemen.
If I stated correctly, the motion is to strike item 174060, traffic impact analysis, and reschedule discussions on the May 5th meeting for introduction. Not discussion, but introduce it on the 15th and vote on it on the 19th. Is that correct?
5th, and vote on it.
Voted on the 5th. I mean, introduce on the 5th, vote on the 19th, correct?
Right.
All right. Is there any objection? Any further discussion? There being none, that motion carries.
I'd like to make a motion to move the ordinance as amended.
The entire ordinance.
The entire ordinance
Are
with
we
the
finished with
amendments that
that?
we approved.
Okay, before we do
We
that,
got definitions to go over.
before we do that, is it item 17, 2011, definitions? I think it's now time to bring up that.
So, if I
Terry?
may, Mr. Chairman. So
Ms.
there-
Cazzo.
It's been brought to our attention, Councilman Ogeron noted it, I think members of the staff have seen it, that in several places in this document, and I think it's very, it was just typographical or inadvertent certainly, that the parish governing authority has been changed to parish government. Or just the parish. And so we want to make sure that any place that change has happened, that it is returned to the parish governing authority. So I'll make a motion that we, that the document be examined and that those changes be made in accordance with how it read initially, which was parish government governing authority.
Okay, got a motion by Terry, second by Chase, to review the documents, and wherever parish governing authority has been changed to read parish government or parish or any other language, it be returned to read parish governing authority. And I got a motion and a second by Chase. Any further discussion? Any objection? There being none, that motion carries. All right. Any other comments on 17, 2011 definitions? All right, I need a motion I got a motion from Chase to move the ordinance as amended.
To include
Second
Ms.
by-
Casso's amendment.
Yeah, to
That
include
was
all
passed after
amendments.
I made my motion.
Yeah, to amend.
Right.
All.
No premature.
Yeah. Second by Michael Mason. Any objection? There being none, motion it is adopted. And we're gonna take about a 5 or 10 minute break. Is that okay with everybody? I think that makes sense. We'll reconvene at 8 o'clock, 10 minutes.
two others are here, and they just want to, they just.
Okay, we're going to reconvene the meeting.
Motion to reconvene.
Motion by Councilwoman Cazzo, second by Councilman Lawler. Any objections? There being none, we're going to reconvene. Item 4, reading of an ordinance to amend the Ascension Parish Unified Land Development Code, Appendix 4, Subdivision Regulations, Section 174044, drainage requirements. 174045, drainage design criteria. 174050, servitude revocation. 17506, protection of existing waterways and conveyance systems. 17506.1, development of in the floodplain. 17-506.2, wetland preservation. 17507, placement of fill. 175012, stormwater conveyance systems. 175013, design criteria. 175014, drainage servitudes. 175094, implementation of the September 2019 changes. 1740100, definitions, and attachment B, drainage impact study procedure. Mr. Kenneth, would you please read the ordinance?
Yes, Your Honor. Purpose: to amend, add, and repeal certain sections of the Unified Land Development Code, specifically amend Section 17-4044, drainage requirements, amend Section 17-4045, drainage design criteria, amend Section 17-4050, servitude revocation, amend Section 17-506, protection of existing watersheds and conveyance systems, amend Section 17-506.1, development in the floodplain, add Section 17-506.2, wetland preservation, amend Section 17-507, placement of field, amend Section 17-5012, stormwater conveyance system, amend Section 17-5013, design criteria, amend Section 17-5014, drainage servitudes, and repeal Section 17-5094, implementation of September 2019 changes, amend Section 17-40100, definitions, and amend attachment B, drainage impact study procedure. Whereas the Parish of Ascension desires to prohibit open ditches, channels, and swales in rear years of major subdivisions, and to require rear yard drainage improvements to be privately owned and maintained, and whereas the Parish of Ascension desires to clarify drainage design criteria and make it consistent with other parts of the Unified Land Development Code, and whereas the Parish of Ascension desires to clarify the requirements for servitude revocations, and whereas the Parish of Ascension desires to require an additional 10% of water to be retained on-site post-development, required a design basis for modifications to off-site conveyance systems to the 50-year storm, and clarify for consistency with the drainage requirements for subdivision regulations, and whereas the Parish of Ascension desires to clarify and provide consistency for development in the floodplain with other sections of the Unified Land Development Code, and whereas the Parish of Ascension desires to enact guidelines for the preservation of wetlands, and whereas the Parish of Ascension desires to clarify field and excavation standards, and whereas the Parish of Ascension desires to clarify that new conveyance systems and revisions to existing conveyance systems require approval by the parish engineer, and further require all conveyance be directed to a primary system on-site and not direct flow to adjacent properties, and whereas the Parish of Ascension desires to require detention facilities to be designed to the 50-year storm require post-development flow to be reduced by 10% to increase the design of subsurface interior conveyance systems to the 25-year storm capacity design, and relocate the design standards from Section 17-4045, drainage design and construction criteria for consistency with the Unified Land Development Code, and whereas the Parish of Ascension desires to relocate the servitude design requirements from Section 17-4045, drainage design and construction criteria for the clarity and consistency, and whereas the Parish of Ascension desires to repeal Section 17-4094, implementation of September 2019, as a transitional application of this section is no longer warranted, whereas the Parish of Ascension desires to supplement, clarify, and make consistent definitions applicable to the subdivision requirements, and whereas the Parish of Ascension desires to require design requirements for a 50-year storm require post-development standards to contain 10% more water than pre-development for the drainage impact study procedure, and for consistency with other sections of the Unified Land Development Code. Now therefore be it ordained by the Ascension Parish Governing Authority of the Parish of Ascension, State of Louisiana, that the Unified Land Development Code be amended and supplemented as further described in Exhibit A attached here to and made part hereof. repeal all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict herewith or hereby, and henceforth repeal. Severability if any provision of this ordinance is held to be invalid, such invalidity shall not affect other provisions herein, which can be given effect without the invalid provisions. And to this end, the provisions of this ordinance are hereby declared to be severable. Effective date, this ordinance shall be in full effect as permitted by law. This ordinance having been submitted to vote, the vote thereon was as follows.
Motion public hearing by Councilman Robert. Second by Councilman Mason. Public hearing is open. Public speakers. Item 5, which I guess includes all of this stuff, is Aaron Chasson.
I actually don't have any proposed changes this time. I just wanted to thank you all again for what you're doing. I know it's hard. You'll probably hear some people after me say that some of these changes don't go far enough. I assume you'll hear some say they go too far. I think, again, there were pretty good compromises. 25 versus 100-year storm, we settled, the 50, no fill or unrestricted fill, limited it to 36 inches, no development in wetlands, unrestricted development in wetlands. I think they're settled on a percentage. Y'all are the policy-making part of this, so y'all are the ones who ultimately determines, but I think some of these are pretty good compromises. Personally, I might have gone a little, closer with the 100-year flood, with the 100-year storm, given the frequency with which those occur now. But it was kind of a compromise deal, but on that and the wetlands and everything else. So, but just want to again thank y'all for what you're doing. I know it's hard, and to urge y'all to pass some form of this and as strict as possible or as good as possible for the parish. So, thank y'all.
Thank you, sir. Brenda Whitney on item 17-4044.
Good evening, council. Thank you. I can't stress enough how important these changes are to our community. I think you know that. I think we as a public now feel like we've finally been heard, and we truly, truly appreciate that. There was a time, and you all know, that we all felt like there was a big wall between us, and I think that wall has been knocked down. And I want to thank you all for your time. Thank Mr. Chason for his time. I know this has been a group effort by a whole bunch of people, and it's truly, truly appreciated. We do ask that you pass it, try to keep the community as a whole in the best place possible, because Ascension is a great place, and we want to keep it that way. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Tim Babin, section 17-4044. He passes, okay. Ms. Polly Glover.
Is this thing on, y'all? Let's see. What do I need to do? I have no clue either. That's all right, we'll skip it. Anyway, good evening, council.
He's getting it.
Let's see. Is it coming? Here we go. Perfect. Well, maybe not. Do I get a restart on my time?
Yeah,
there you go.
We'll restart the time, so just
hold on, let's see if we can get it to where we can show it. All right.
let me get back and I'll restart your time.
Okay, thank you. Ready? Good evening, council. I've spent the last few decades of my life advocating for our wetlands. So I'm here tonight to tell you thank you, first of all, for bringing an ordinance for preservation of our wetlands. It's a historic night for Ascension that we recognize the value. I've come here tonight speaking on the behalf of several key players in this: Chairmanship Klein of the CPRA, the National Wildlife Federation, Ascension Parish grad, coastal scientist Haley LaBeouf, many of my peers who are here tonight in the room, as well as peers from across the nation. I served for years on the board of directors of the Coalition to Restore Coastal Louisiana and have just recently been appointed to the board of Coastal Conservation. I would like to share with you tonight a letter from Chairmanship Klein. I am chairman of the Louisiana Coastal Protection Restoration Authority, the state board entity that speaks for a unified voice on behalf of all matters related to coastal policy. I'm writing today in support of this proposed ordinance that would enact guidelines for the preservation of our wetlands. This issue was brought to my attention by Polly Glover, a concerned citizen and an advocate that I've spent years working alongside in the fight for a more sustainable coast, and I echo and support the issues that she has raised. With the waterways, wetlands, and proximity to Lake Marpole, Ascension Parish is indeed a coastal parish, although more inland from the coast than those to the south and east who are experiencing land loss directly. Ascension is very much susceptible to the effects of hurricane damage, as we all saw during Hurricane Ida. Unfortunately, if the degradation of the coast continues unabated, Ascension's vulnerability will increase over time. Given the situation, it is important that the inland parishes, like Ascension, to look more closely at protection measures to maintain the health and function of the wetland environments. On the bright side, Ascension can look forward to several key projects that will increase its future resilience. The Laurel Ridge Levee, the Marpole reintroduction, and other projects, including desnagging of Bayou Manchac, that will all play a role in offsetting some of the problems that the parish is currently experiencing. Recognizing Louisiana's ever-changing dynamic within the coastal zone and the ongoing need to protect what's left, our wetlands from the storm and flood damage, the need for habitat protection, I'm asking for your vote favorably. And I'm just going to simply add, we don't have any more time. You know, we have water from the north, we have water from the south. We have a little thing called climate change, subsidence, and sea level rise. And in closing, I'm just going to let you know the statistics are we've lost 106 square miles of land from Hurricane Ida alone. This ordinance is imperative. And Clint, before they beat me, I'm going to say that I applaud you and Jerome and Ricky and all of you for your concern.
Thank you, Paula. Your time is up.
Thank you.
You have two other here that did not want to speak. Patricia Pino is in favor of 174044, as well as Donna Jones, 174044, and all others. Thank you. Having no other comments, I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing. Motion by Michael, second by Terry. Any objection? Hearing is closed. Now we'll open for discussion among council members. We'll go by section. And first section is section 174044, drainage requirements.
Mr. Chair, is there any comment from staff?
Is there a question?
If not, I'll make the motion for that section.
No comments.
I mean,
Okay.
I'm sorry, amendment,
Terry?
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
We don't need a motion, I'm sorry.
Eric?
Yeah, actually, I was going to make an amendment because I realized something. Section 174044A, the subdivider shall plan for drainage, et cetera, where it says the general drainage plan of the parish. It's just like trying to get things straightened up. It should be general drainage plan of East Ascension Consolidated Drainage, Consolidated Gravity Drainage District, and the West Ascension Drainage Commission, I think it is, or district, because the parish actually doesn't have a plan. The drainage commissions do. So if we're going to specify, I think that's what it has to say. But I don't know what the proper name for West Ascension is.
Is there someone here who can address that, Mr. President?
West Ascension Drainage, okay.
Yeah, West Ascension Drainage is fine.
Yeah. So that's why I would make an amendment just to remove parish in the second line on A and replace it with East Ascension Consolidated Gravity Drainage District and West Ascension Drainage.
Consolidated Gravity Drainage District.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Whatever Coach said for West Ascension.
I'll second.
Okay. I got a motion to change the language in A, seconded by Michael. Any objections? There being none, that carries. Any other items in 174044? Okay. Next is 174045, drainage design criteria. Any questions, any comments? Okay, there being none. 174050, servitude revocation. I think a lot of these were just minor language improvements. Okay, any other comments on servitude revocation? Moving along to 17506, protection of existing watersheds and conveyance systems.
uh, 17506, each section of it, because I have some comments on 17506 too.
Two? Okay, go ahead. Go ahead, Joel.
As far as the wetlands, adapting a code that would protect the wetlands, right now we have a 15% use of wetlands if you do own it over 20 acres, I believe, or 50 subdivisions within a plot of land. I think there is a need, such as Ms. Polly said. I mean, we do need to have some type of rule, some type of ordinance as far as how much we can do. But we also have to keep in mind some of the places and some of the safeguards that are already in place. I'm going to entertain or see if anyone would entertain changing that number, and I'll give you a few reasons why. First, all of this property that is being developed in wetlands or will be developed in wetlands, that property still has to follow the rest of the code, and it still has to follow the U.S. Corps of Engineers mitigation process. So, for example, if someone was to have 20 acres that they want to develop of wetlands, for them to develop that 20 acres, and this does not include the cost of the property, this does not include any development or anything, I mean, you're looking close to $5 million, because it's an average of about $125,000 per acre just to mitigate it. Now, that mitigation money goes toward the preservation of wetlands. And the way that process works is to develop 1 acre of the wetland. They go in, and the Corps will tell you how bad or the degree of the wetlands, and they'll tell you how many acres you have to have or have to buy to offset it. So you offset it by buying farm property or wetland property that was turned into farm property. And the process of that and the property, that's where you get the cost from. So with that said, any of the developments in the wetland area, and if we were to, or we looked at the chart over there of Ascension Parish and of Sorrento and Santa Ma, if we were to be really specific and really technical, I mean, you could almost pass pretty much all of Sorrento and Santa Ma as wetlands. I feel like there's a different way to raise that number from 15% and still give concessions that will help the parish. Currently, I understand that the Corps of Engineers does not help the parish specifically, because these regions that you have to buy land to mitigate are sometimes out the parish. So you may be replacing the wetlands you bought or you're going to develop in a different municipality. I get that. So maybe we could consider creating a mitigation for the parish of wetlands, not to be associated with the buying of property and things like that for the federal government, but let's say that the parish puts aside a certain percentage of this mitigation cost. Let's say and just a number to throw out, every acre you decide to bring into development, you have got to pay $5,000 an acre to mitigate just the parish for it. And that $5,000 an acre we could possibly do that with improvements on the property. Educational wise, we could even look at doing a big project like a spillway or something for the parish in the Sorrento area. Maybe we could put millions of dollars into creating a large spillway that we can develop the wetland area around it near the interstate and then preserve wetlands in this spillway, which will give you more drainage, it will give you more containment area for water, and then it gives you sports, it gives you duck hunting. We could work with the wildlife and fisheries, you can work with the Corps of Engineers. This is real deal things that we could do with the proper money and the proper stuff. So with all that said, I'll offer from 15% to 50% and also offer some mitigation talks with the parish as far as helping the parish in
What
addition
specific
to the
section is that,
Corps.
Joel? What specific section?
It's section 17506.2, and we would change I. If you go 1, 2, 3, the fourth line down, parish-approved uses in an amount not to exceed 50% instead of 15%. So we strike out 15 and add 50. And I would be fine if we, I don't know if we would have this in this particular amendment or not, but to add something to add a value to parish mitigation, to where we can help restore or help the wetlands within this parish and not just within the district of that wetland. And I also did want to mention that your wetlands are going to be in your areas that are already going to have to follow the mitigation of your drainage at containing 10% more water than you were containing before. So, I mean, we still have got to look at that. We're not losing water storage, we're adding water storage within these specific spots. So I'll just put that out there and see what anyone has as far as comments on it.
Okay. Councilman Lawler.
Yeah, I've got a couple questions on this, excuse me. Where did the 15% come from? And then where did the 20 and 25-foot undisturbed perimeters come from? How do we decide upon those?
Councilman Lawler, this section basically was taken from some work that was done in Tangible Parish, just recently, in fact, in a recent ordinance change that they've gone through. And so we looked at this, modified it accordingly to fit the Ascension Parish needs. And so that was the genesis of this, right? So in that ordinance in Tangible Parish, they did have the 15% as preservation, right? We added language that you see in blue, meaning that we were looking to preserve hydraulically connected wetlands that were over an acre in size, all right? So we added that language in addition to what we found from some other studies locally here in South Louisiana.
Have we looked at, I like some of what Joel said about incentivizing, assisting the parish instead of the district. Have we looked at doing any sort of incentivization for this sort of thing to preserve wetlands or anything that would benefit the parish?
Is that part of our hydraulic study, the HNTP work?
In what way incentivize?
Well, find ways to encourage people to, preserve wetlands, but also do it within the parish. Kind of like what Joel was saying, it doesn't always occur within the same parish, and we want to help us to do it, and also make it more financially feasible to save. The more wetlands you save, the better, because as it is now, I could see people saying, "Hey, I'm just going to do 15% and boom, cut it off if they can." But if we could get people to preserve more and more wetlands,
Yeah.
I think that would benefit us.
I think obviously we're talking about 20 acres in size or exceeding 50 lots. We're talking major subdivisions here. So I think, the conversation with developers is, can you enhance these as part of a recreational park or walk path through wetlands to do some things like that may kind of have an incentive to the subdivision itself. Those type of incentives to make the wetlands more of a park type, more of a use type situation within the development. I think the core purpose here is to protect our low-lying areas and low wetlands because we're steadily running out of them, and they are critical to drainage and water retention in the parish.
In terms of a study, Councilman Lawler, HNTP is doing some master drainage planning work for us right now. And I think as part of that work, they're looking at areas that can be used for detention, regional detention, things of this sort. And a lot of those areas will very likely fall into the wetland category, right? So that the two things are exclusive, but in a lot of cases, there's a lot of overlap between areas that are primed for detention as well as wetlands areas. So we're going through that study now. I think you guys are aware of that. So, yeah.
And this only applies, I believe, to subdivisions. What about whether it be commercial property or even move Ascension? When we do a road, we can't just go tear up wetlands.
It is.
Okay.
It does apply to commercial.
It does. Industrial also?
Yes.
It does apply industrial?
They have to mitigate just like everybody else. It's a federal mandate.
I mean, is this going to affect like our parish projects, drainage projects, and transportation projects?
We had to mitigate the New River dredging.
Yeah.
So yes, it does.
Okay, cool.
And we also had to mitigate Edenborn Extension, that road that we put through there.
It doesn't exempt, the mitigation or any one parish or likewise. What it does is it just preserves wetlands is what the intent is here. It preserves it. And
I'm just curious if there's a way that we can try and get people to do better than 15%, work on some sort of incentivization project, kind of like what Joel was saying. I'd like to see improving that.
I think that's possible. Again, this was just a discussion what I've had with several of y'all. I think that 30% would be a compromise, and if you choose not to defer this, but let's look at options and maybe we can adjust that later. And if we can have these programs, but I think if 30% is a compromise and then we come in and look at other options and put them in place, then maybe we go to 50%. But they're not in place right now. And so I think it's critical that we have the opportunity right now to vote on something tonight that should protect our wetlands.
Councilman Mason.
Yeah, I mean, kind of after hearing, I know that one of the things that stands out to me is that the drainage, the wetlands mitigation, it doesn't necessarily always mitigate in Ascension, it just in our kind of area. And I think that's kind of a concern with all the flooding issues that we've been having. Something else that kind of strikes me is there's a consideration for a waiver in this. And I don't, it's, the language is, if it's practically unavoidable, or practical avoidance and minimization has been analyzed, then the applicant or developer may bring this issue to the parish planning and development director for consideration of a waiver. I don't like that. I think in terms of wetlands mitigation, I don't think there should be many waivers because I think we need to preserve those as best as possible. So I would actually like to see that stricken if we could.
Do we know why that's in there?
Councilman Wangsback.
Do we know why the waiver's in there?
Yeah, I'd like to make the comment. I mean, I would be in favor of keeping it as is or even go to zero. I mean, I hear a lot of good ideas, but they're only conceptual. So, I mean, until we have something in place, let's preserve our wetlands because there's no guarantee. We can all say that we're going to have plans, but let's preserve it and we can always change it later. Like President Quimmo said, I mean, we can change it later, but if we make it higher and we don't have real plans and they get kicked down the road, then we're going to lose those wetlands and they're never coming back. So why not be conservative and keep them and then come back with a plan for mitigation later?
I think I'd like to have Mr. Compton comment on this because he's done a lot of research on this.
So the 15%, generally speaking, is to allow for road and utility crossings, and it's to allow where you have irregularities in the property where a slight mitigation allows you to get a developable lot. So that's why that 15% number is in there, and it allows you to make your property developable. The 50-foot buffer is based on a national best practice. I called some of my engineer buddies in Florida because in Florida, any wetland over an acre you can't touch, and you have to have a 50-foot buffer on it. What they said is it works better in jurisdictions where it's a 50-foot average, 25-foot minimum, so that if you have those areas where you can't meet the average, you can make it down to 25 feet as the minimum. And somebody asked earlier before the meeting is, why do I need a buffer on a wetland? And I said, because generally speaking, you can't trust people to not impact them. You want that buffer to serve as the filter before your water runs off into it. We're in a moratorium because we have major drainage problems in this parish, and we continue to mitigate wetlands and buy property outside of the parish that doesn't help us. It doesn't help us one single bit. A mitigation bank only works if you buy property that's not already a wetland. And to say $5,000 per acre, I understand it's a lot for a developer to who's mitigating 20 acres and spending $2.5 million. We're going to get $10,000 or whatever that number ends up being. We can't even buy an acre for $10,000, especially a usable upland acre that you're going to turn into a wetland to mitigate those wetlands you lost. So for the perspective of wetland preservation, the reason we went and attacked it this ardently is because it's important. We've lost so many acres to development, and we need to do as good as we can, as big of an effort as we can to protect these areas for water to go and protect our residents. Plain and simple.
Chase?
Well, I have a question for Ricky real quick since he's talking. Do you mind?
Go ahead.
I just have a question for Ricky. What is the waiver for?
So generally speaking, it would be, my development is a little bigger and I need another road crossing to get it to an area, and maybe that gets up to 17.5%. But, you know, I'm not talking about going from 15% to 40%. It would be to maybe access another piece of property where there's an upland pocket that you can get to and do something. But, you know, that waiver is going to be limited in scope. And yeah, I hate the idea that, yes, the possibilities out there that you could grant an 80% waiver, but, you know, perhaps you write in here, in no case shall it be greater than X%. I don't know what that number is, because until we get in there and start to look at it and see where we're talking about, but I can show you a number of plats where we mitigated wetlands and ended up building less stormwater than wetlands that we mitigated. We need to move away from that trend.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, next is Joel Robert.
As far as to speak about going from where we are to 0%, I don't know where that comes from, considering right now there is 0 regulations from the parish. Right now, you can develop 100% of your property as long as you find and you go through the national, federal, and state regulations. So to say that you can't develop any property in the wetlands, that's a big, bold statement. I mean, it's not like you're getting rid of these wetlands. You are mitigating them. You know, we're adding something new here. This is a new ordinance. You know, I'm going to stick to I'm going to go ahead and make my motion for the 40% of the wetlands to change it from 15% to 40%.
Got a motion by Councilman Robert.
Second.
Second by Coach. Any objection? Got one objection. I'm sorry. Before we take a vote, can we have discussion?
Yeah.
Dempsey?
Yeah, I was just wanting to get back to, I heard the parish, Aaron was talking about, we have replanted trees and we have let part of our channels go back to wetland. I don't know what, Ron, 6 years ago we went in. So we are good stewards. We have been giving back, and we've been, you know, more or less educating people also with this. But I think there's a number we can reach here. Is it 30? Is it 15? I think we could come up with something here that we can work with. But you know, the public, they have been educated on this. I mean, we have been working hand in hand with the Corps. That's one of the reasons why now we have a good working relationship with the Corps. So, you know, I think we're on the right track. What the number is, I'm open for that.
Okay, next is Aaron.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, Ricky, do other areas do like some sort of incentivization to where if somebody does it, and I think I had the numbers wrong backwards before, but if they only do 10%, is there something that we can encourage them to do less?
So conceptually, we're going to be working on this code for the next year. And one of the significant pieces that we're going to work on is the wetland incentivization portion. And what that's going to say is if you've got 100 acres of 3 units an acre property, right, and 20 of it is wetland, we're going to want you to preserve that 20 acres. But we're going to allow you to move the density from that 20 acres onto the upland that is developable. What that's going to result in is potentially some smaller lots, which is called cluster development. It happens all over the country. It doesn't happen here yet because it's not a concept that people are used to hearing about. But what we want to do is incentivize wetland preservation by allowing them to transfer the density that those wetland, have credited because of the zoning to the developable part of the property.
You should be careful because what you're talking about is increasing density, and people get a little crazy about that.
But you're not increasing the total carrying capacity of the property because it's not going to go above the gross 3 units per acre.
Believe me, I understand that. Yeah. But I can tell you, in the past, people have gone up and ranted and raved about higher density, and they didn't understand that, hey, yes, it's for part of the property, but you're saving a lot more. So be careful when you explain that to people because they'll get a little crazy on you. How quickly can we get this incentivization process?
So again, the way that Kendrick Keast has structured our process moving forward is I don't know the answer because we're changing the entire Unified Land Development Code. So to say that I'm going to go in and address that one specific issue when I'm done with the traffic piece, I can't tell you that's going to happen right away. But I can tell you what we're going to save in wetlands through whatever number you guys add. If it's greater than, less than 100%, right, then it's better than it is today, whatever the number is. So we're going to work on this, and we will add incentivization to the zoning code. When is it going to happen? Within the next 12 months. That's all I can tell you, because we've got a lot of work to do.
So if we're looking for a compromise, it's kind of let's secure those wetlands and save them today, and let's work this system to look at those incentives, because it is just as difficult to make sure you get that right as it is the fill ordinance and mitigation credits into regional detention and all that. I mean, it's an extensive amount of legal and ordinance changes and language, and it's just going to take time. So I guess my hopes is that we can start saving wetlands today with some type of compromises. My hopes.
Okay, next was Terry Casso.
I want to go back to that increased density piece for just a second. That has caused some meetings here to be terribly, abusive. I know of no other way to describe it. So I'm going to ask, is this administration going to be supportive of preserving more wetlands but increasing density in order to offset the losses to someone who's trying to develop?
Yeah, my answer to that is we want to work with the public to ensure that it's clear exactly what we're doing and that they play a part in getting their feedback on what that looks like. Because I can't tell you today what that looks like. But let's approach that in a very communicative way and with outreach, and let's get that input to ensure that when we undertake that and get to that point of voting on something, that we've covered all the bases and we've gotten that public input. And we'll see where that's at, and we'll make a judgment call along the way. But I don't know what that looked like today. I can't answer that today because I don't know what it looks like. I don't know what those incentives look like. I don't know if the public will accept that or not. I just don't know until we formulate it craft it, present it, get feedback, adjust it, and then take a look at the final version that's put before y'all.
Councilman Wagaspack, you had your. You took yours off, okay. Any other comments? I know, we got a motion by Councilman Robert to increase item I from 15 to 40%. That's second by Coach. I got an objection by Michael, so let's put the voting machines up.
Yeah, we need to wait for Chase.
Wait for Jace. Chase, we're voting on his motion to
Aaron, you have
increase
to
it to
vote.
40%.
50, wasn't it? 40?
40.
So Aaron's worked, Terry, you need a vote. Okay.
Motion carries. Next item. What is it? 17507, placement of fill. Any comments? No comments? Moving along. Item 175012, stormwater conveyance systems. Any questions, discussions? Moving along. 175013, design criteria. No questions or comments? 175014, drainage servitudes. No comments? 175094, implementation of September 19 changes. No comments? 1740-100, definitions and attachment B, drainage impact study procedure. Any comments or questions? Councilman Lawler.
Yeah, we are on definitions, right?
Correct.
So I thought, just making sure. In what situation, under parish engineer, I'm glad it's a professional engineer license in the state of Louisiana, but in which cases will it be the decision, will it include the drainage board? Like, are we gonna, we're not engineers, at least drainage engineers. I'm just, the last line on that, I was just curious. In what situation do we envision making these decisions? It seems like it's defining the drainage board as a parish engineer. I don't know, that's what I'm trying to figure out.
Yeah, at the very end, parish engineer may include the drainage board. Mr. Lawler, Councilman Lawler.
Yes, sir.
In those instances where matters that don't concern the council but concern the drainage board, it would take into consideration the drainage board is acting as the engineer, right? So the drainage board will and should have an engineer associated with it, correct? So that's
I'm getting there.
That's what we're including here. Okay.
Maybe I can clarify. So I guess we could be talking about the subdivisions we're doing the work in and modifying those based on drainage board approval. Most recently, we're all familiar with those.
Yeah.
So maybe it's that sentence allows for the drainage board to come in and make some of those decisions based on maybe going to a higher criteria or whatever needs to fix the drainage problem that has been brought to the drainage board.
I'm not saying it's wrong, I'm curious. I'm trying to figure it out.
I would think that's the only time it qualifies.
Okay. No objection.
We could make modifications to that and say that it's the engineer appointed by the drainage board, if there is such an entity in it. Who may be different than the parish engineer.
You know, maybe we could change it that it could be where it says parish engineer or another parish designee, or it could be or another East Ascension Consolidated Drainage District, whatever it is, and West Ascension Drainage Designee. Would that fix it? Or another designee, because as long as the person has to be a professional engineer, I'm good with this.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, that's the most important part, that they have to be a professional engineer. Before, the way it was written, it could have been anybody. So I think.
Professional engineer designated by the.
Yeah, so anytime the drainage board would take up an issue, you would say, listen, we'd like an engineer to look at this. Then the administration would then go out, get one of the engineers off the preferred list that y'all approve. We get the engineer, that information is then engineered, comes back to y'all to make the final decision. So, I mean, we've done that, and that's kind of the process. I think it just gives the drainage board an opportunity or a foot into the process, in my opinion, which I think is important.
And that was the intent when we drafted this. Yeah.
That's fine.
Okay, just as Clint described.
Are you okay with that? Yeah, we just propose it.
Yeah, I was more curious than anything.
Yeah. There again, it's something we can address down the road if we must.
If we have a complication, absolutely, we can change the language.
If we have to, we can do it later. Okay, any more comments? Okay, the chair will entertain a motion, but before I do that, Terry had asked me to make a comment.
I believe that there are also in this section some places where, as there were in the previous ones, that for somehow, some way, Ascension Parish governing authority became Ascension Parish government or the parish. So I would like to make a motion that any place that has previously stated the Ascension Parish governing authority, that return to that language.
Second. A motion, second by.
No.
It was
No accusation.
No accusation, inadvertent. It was brought to our attention. So we just want to make sure it's corrected.
Mr. President, it never dawned on me that would have happened. It was just
We're just on camera, and I want to make sure I go on the record.
And on camera, I will say, it did not dawn on me that would have happened. I think it's just it's strictly just a typographical.
Motion by Terry, second by.
Dawned on me.
I'll second it. Robert, or either one. Go ahead. Any other comments? Any objection? That motion carries. Now we have a motion I need a motion to move the ordinance as amended.
Yeah, Chairman, you still have attachment B, drainage impact study procedure?
Oh.
I didn't see that. That's your last one.
Page 17 of the second packet.
17, okay, I apologize. Gentlemen, Attachment B, drainage impact study procedure. Begins on page 17, and I think it goes through 18, and 19, and 20, and 21. It ends on 22, that's right, I went through that. Any questions or comments on drainage, attachment B, drainage impact study procedure?
If there's no comments, Chair, I'll make a motion to pass the ordinance as amended.
Got a motion by Councilman Lawson, second by Councilman Lawler, to pass the ordinance as amended. Is there any,
Wait before we adjourn.
Dempsey, go ahead.
I'd just like to also, we want to thank the Citizen Advisory Board, Planning and Zoning. I know we all burn up Jerome's phone and really appreciate all the help and working through this. So want to make sure we give everyone a thanks.
Councilwoman Kazu.
Mr. Lambert, that was my comment that I wanted to make as well. Thank you very much. We've had many meetings off at the governmental building. We've worked closely together, and we appreciate it. We appreciate the input from the public, and certainly from the Advisory Commission. I want to thank the chairman and the council secretary who worked diligently to get this organized in such a way that we could get through this meeting tonight and do it professionally and efficiently. So thank you very much for that. Thank you over there. Staff has done a great job, even keeping us all with mics turning on. So that was fantastic. Thank you for that great work. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Terry. And I'd like to just echo Councilman Lambert's comments. This was a major undertaking. It's the first step. I think it was a positive step. I can't thank the administration, the staff, all the council members who engaged and got actively involved in this process. We're moving forward. That's what we need to do. We can't slow down. We can't, we can take a break, but we can't stop. So I appreciate everyone's input, everyone's cooperation and respect for one another. That's critical in us moving forward. We continue to show respect. That is going to get us a long way through the process. Thank you, everybody, and I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion by Michael. Second by Dempsey. We are adjourned.